Hello and welcome to American Living Off Grid in Africa. We get a lot of questions from a lot of people about a lot of things. And a lot of them, the answers are pretty much the same for every third world country. And so I've spent a lot of time in the Philippines, I've spent a lot of time in Africa, spent a lot of time in South America. And So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some things to think about. If you decide that you're going to go to Africa or the Philippines or basically any third world country, but more specifically the Philippines or East Africa. The, Before you leave a first world country for a third world country, you have to understand it is not the same kind of place because it's not the same kind of people, it's not the same economy, it's not the same situation. Sometimes it's not the same religion, and the governments are completely different. So, what you have to do is you have to think about the things that you're going to have to deal with, and you have to consider whether or not you think those things are something that you can deal with. Excuse me. Now, the things that I'm talking about, say child marriage, for instance, you don't have to agree with it. You don't have to like it. You don't have to approve of it. But you do have to live with it. You have to deal with it. Now, if you can't handle it without sticking your nose in and interfering and saying things to people just off the cuff, then don't go. Do not go to the Philippines. Do not go to East Africa. They will kill you. Okay? Just understand that. You're talking about people's lives, their culture, their lifestyle that they've had for 1,000 years. And they're not going to change it for you. And they're not going to appreciate your opinion. Now, if you want to work behind the scenes and you want to support some political person who is against child marriage and you want to help give them money or something, that's okay. But the last thing you want to do is get involved in politics in a third world country because there ain't no quicker way to get dead. They'll do a drive-by shooting on you or you'll get poisoned. I mean, it happens all the time. So, I mean, here in Malawi, I'll tell you what, they will flat beat you down and set you on fire in the middle of the street. It happens. And the cops are going to sit back and sip their coffee and go, what? What? I'm not kidding you. And here in Malawi, people get married, adult men marry girls that are 12, 13 years old every day. Sometimes, since you're allowed to have multiple wives, they'll marry 2 or 3 or 4 of them. And technically it's illegal, but as long as you got the chief's permission to do it, you can do pretty much anything you want. And you slip the chief $10 and he'll approve anything. You can marry a bicycle, it doesn't make any difference. They just do it. That's all. And everybody knows about it, and nobody does anything about it. That's just how it is. And it's the same thing. You go to the Philippines, like Mindanao, for instance. Mindanao is autonomous, so it's because of a particular group of people. They have their own laws, and the rest of the Philippine laws do not apply in Mindanao. And there are adult men marrying girls 8, 9, 10 years old every day. You take Nigeria, for instance. The minimum age for marriage is 11. Saudi Arabia, it's 0. Yeah, 0. You can marry a 2-week-old baby in Saudi Arabia. Why? I don't know. But if I go there, I have to understand, okay, this is how these people think. And how they got that way ain't none of my business. I just have to live with it. If I'm going to live there, I have to be able to deal with those kind of things. Now, another one is child labor. People, especially Americans, get all offended because people are having their children do physical work. And in America, you can't do that unless you're on a farm and they're helping you pick corn or something. Well, here, you're going to see kids 3, 4, 5 years old going to the grocery store for mom and dad. You're going to see children, 8, 10, 12 years old, carrying a basket of something on their head, walking up and down the street downtown, selling whatever it is, or working in a shop, working in a stall. This is my wife, by the way. And if you're not willing to deal with that kind of stuff, if you don't have a way in your brain to say, well, this is their culture and this is how they do things, without trying to get involved and stick your nose in, then don't come here. Don't go to the Philippines. Don't go to Mexico. Don't go to any third world country if you can't keep your thoughts and feelings to yourself. Because you're just going to get in a whole lot of trouble. And I mean in a hurry. Because these people are just not going to put up with it. They just won't. If you're real lucky, you'll go to prison. If you're not, you're going to be the next guy in the cemetery. Child discipline is another thing. In most states in the U.S., if you strike a child anywhere except on the bottom with anything except your hand, it's considered abuse. Well, not so in most third world countries. You're going to see people smack kids upside the head. You're going to see sometimes maybe people beating their kid with a stick, screaming at them, cussing at them, whatever. And the best thing for you to do, if you want to pray for them, that's fine. But you go over there and inject yourself into that situation, you're going to get jailed, deported, or killed. And that's just how it is. Those people have their culture that they've had forever. And the best thing you can do is just keep it to yourself. And if you can't deal with it, don't go. I mean, that's the best way to tell you. Just stay home. Bribery, corruption, that's another thing. The Philippines, East Africa, they have, a lot of times they'll have prices for foreigners and prices for natives. And they're entirely different. They don't even try to hide it from you. It's completely out in the open, Hey, there's the foreigner prices over there. And they're just going to charge you more because you're a foreigner. They just assume that you have money, and that's just the way it is. Now, I hate that, and I don't go back to people that do that kind of thing to me. But, which is why you always want to have a maid if you're in a third world country, because the maid is a native person, and they're not going to overcharge the maid because she's a local. And my maid here, she saves me 3 times, 5 times what I pay her every month, just in not being overcharged for stuff. We went to a market, and my wife is Malawian. We were in Malawi, and my wife walked past this shop, and she said, "How much is this?" And the guy gave her a price. It was about 80 cents, and American money, the equivalent of about 80 cents. And I walked by 5 minutes later, and I said, "How much is this?" And it was $2. Just because of my skin color. Simple as that. Now, you can hate it, you can get mad about it, but the only thing you can do is live with it. Deal with it, work with it, because it's going to happen. I got my notes here. Why do I need notes? Because I'm old and I can't remember all this stuff. The death penalty. Let's say you're American and you're a liberal and you just hate the death penalty. Well, don't come here. The police caught somebody a couple weeks ago stealing car batteries out of cars on a police post, I might add, and they shot him dead. Boom. Simple as that. And nobody cares. Nobody. Because they just understand if you do this, that's going to happen. Period. So you can agree with it, you can disagree with it, whatever, but they're going to keep doing it. I mean, they kill people for small things. They caught some people running drugs, and they ain't been seen since. And ain't nobody upset about it. They're just gone. Now the assumption is they were fed to the crocodiles, but you don't really know. If that kind of thing triggers you and you can't find a way to deal with it in your mind, don't come here. Stay home. Stay out of trouble. Because you come here, you're going to be in a mess of trouble if you start talking about that kind of stuff, complaining about it. Nope. Littering. There are literally millions of little plastic bags floating around all over East Africa, because that's what the Chinese supply the vendors with here. These little tiny bags, because they're cheap. They're not environmentally friendly. The Chinese don't care, and neither do the people here. They care about what's the cheapest thing they can use, and that's the cheapest thing they can use, so that's what they use, and they're everywhere. There's no public trash pickup. There's no way to recycle them. No place to recycle them. There's no landfills. So they either get piled up and burnt, which is another thing, open burning. There are billions of open fires all across Africa every day. Millions and millions and millions of open fires all across Philippines, Mexico, every third world country. That's how they cook. Well, are you going to walk in here and tell me, y'all got to quit cooking? Really? No, it ain't going to happen. People are going to do what they need to do. And if it's environmentally friendly, great. If it's not, they're going to do it anyway. You got to eat, you got to feed your kids, you're going to do whatever you got to do. There's these roots here that they use, they grind up, put in the water, it poisons the fish. They float to the top, they gather them up and take them home and eat them. Well, you can get upset about that if you want to, but it ain't going to help anything. They did it 1,000 years ago, they did it 100 years ago, they did it yesterday, and they're going to do it tomorrow. The roles of women is another thing. When we're here in Malawi, my wife has to serve me my food on her knees, because that's the culture here. Now you can holler women's lib, women's rights, blah, 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 all you want. Go right ahead. Just don't do it here. Because if you do it here, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And it's the women that are going to get madder than anybody. You think I'm kidding? I'm not. You'll see a woman walking down the road, maybe a little girl even, like I saw, got a car battery on her head, carrying it on her head. They carry stuff on their head you can't even believe. 100-pound bags of corn, 100-pound bags of cement. This girl had a car battery, had her arm loaded with firewood, had a baby on her back, strapped on her back with a piece of cloth. Man walking next to her, one carrying nothing. Now, in America, that just ain't gonna work out. Here, that's how they do things. It just is. It's like, you coming to some place like this and complaining about the way things are and how they do stuff is kind of like jumping in the river and then complaining because you're wet. I mean, you don't want to jump in there, so shut up. It's your fault, okay? Now, the animal rights is another thing, animal cruelty, whatever you want to call it. You will see a motorcycle going down the road with a pig with his front legs tied to the front handlebars of the motorcycle and his back legs tied to the back seat of the motorcycle and back up the seat of the motorcycle. And, that's pretty uncomfortable for that pig. But nobody cares. Nobody's going to say anything to the guy driving the motorcycle, except maybe, when y'all having dinner, I want to come over. When you roast that pig, I want to get invited. You're going to see people carrying chickens with their wings bent back up above to the middle of their back like this. That's how they carry them. And they'll stuff 10 of them in a bag and throw them in the back of a bus or pickup truck or anything else. That's just how they do. And they'll just grab it, whack its head off, and start cleaning it right anywhere. Anywhere at any time. A goat, somebody will buy a goat and you be standing there talking to them about the goat and they'll pull out a butcher knife and start sawing its head off. Well, if that kind of thing bothers you, and people kick dogs and throw rocks at dogs and kill dogs with a stick or whatever all the time here. And in the Philippines, the same thing. Those people care about eating and getting by. Animal rights is the last thing on the list, man. They're going to do what they need to do to feed their kids and make a living. And they're not the least bit interested in your opinion. Believe that. So, what I'm saying is, if you're thinking about, considering going to one of these places, any third world country, but specifically and in particular, East Africa, like Zambia, Tanzania, Mozambique, Malawi, Kenya, or anywhere in the Philippines or Thailand, that area. Now, Japan's a whole different thing. That's another ball of wax. Japan is not a third world country, and they do everything completely different. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Philippines, that kind of thing. When you go to the Philippines, adjust your brain. This is not America. This is not UK. This is a different kind of place. This is not Europe. This is a different kind of place. These are different kind of people. They think differently than I do. I am a stranger here. They're not. So my ideas don't count and theirs do. No, excuse me. There's a dust problem today. Windy. Anyway, in closing, I want to tell you one more time. It is very important that you think about this stuff and get it worked out in your brain before you go to one of these countries, because it won't end well. Thank you for your time, and be sure to like and subscribe. I've got hundreds of other videos on general lifestyle in East Africa and Philippines and things like that. So thank you for your time and have a great day.